So let me now introduce our final plenary session of today. It's called Developing More Affordable and Sustainable Cities. And in it, our panel are going to discuss how urban leaders can promote efficiency and make cities more affordable for everyone. I'm going to be handing over to a chair. So let me introduce Christopher Swope, who's managing editor of Citiscope, an online magazine covering innovation in cities around the world with a focus on sustainable urbanisation. So please welcome to the stage, Christopher Swope.
Thank you, Georgie. Well, we've been hearing a lot at this Congress that the world is growing increasingly urban. And as more and more people move to cities, those cities are also growing more and more expensive. That's certainly the case here in Barcelona. Or consider London, which Bloomberg News recently declared to be Western Europe's least expensive city. I'm sorry, least affordable city. Couldn't be farther from the truth. Least affordable city. It actually costs more to live in London than the average paycheck. A lot more. And it's not just London. The situation is actually much worse in other global cities such as Caracas, Kiev, Hanoi, Mumbai, and many others. Of course, what comes with the high housing costs is also high transportation costs. As people move farther from the city to find housing that they can afford. And the transportation situation, of course, brings costs to society and to our planet in terms of air pollution and greenhouse gases. City leaders are feeling it too. All these new urban residents use city services, and the cost of administering those services is also increasing, which only ratchets up the pressure on local budgets. We know that this is not a sustainable situation. It's not sustainable financially, it's not sustainable socially, it's not sustainable environmentally. Yet many leaders from government and industry are working hard to change this. They're trying to make their cities both sustainable and affordable. But can you have both of those things? That's the question we're going to be asking here today. We have an excellent group to discuss that with us. First, to my left from the Netherlands, we have Mayor Jorritsma of Eindhoven. That's a city known as the Dutch capital of technology, knowledge, and design. Next, from Singapore, we have Koon Cheong. She's the CEO of the Housing and Development Board. Next, from France, there's Denis Hameau. He's a member of the Municipal Council from the city of Dijon. From Germany, we have Ulrich Ahle, the CEO of FIWARE, which has an open source platform for bringing city data together to manage services better. And finally, from here in Spain, we have Francisco Javier Garcia Vieira. He's a director of digital public services with Red.es, which is part of the Spanish government's effort to build a digital economy. I'm going to start with some questions, but I'd like to remind you all that we'd like to have your involvement in this session too. So please do use the smartphone app, the Ask and Vote feature, where you can ask questions or you can vote for other people's questions so that I'll know what's on all of your minds. There's also a microphone, so please, if you prefer to ask a question the old-fashioned way, please do that. But I'm going to start off with a question for each of the panelists here, and I'm going to start with Mayor Jorritsma. Right now in Bonn, COP23, the climate talks are happening, and city officials made a big show of force last week to show how much cities can be part of the solution when it comes to climate change. Eindhoven has made one of really the most impressive pushes around in this fight against fossil fuels by creating Europe's largest fleet of electric buses. So could you please just tell us about that program and how has it made this, how have you made that affordable to citizens?
Okay, thank you for asking me that, Chris. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you see here a very proud mayor of the capital, the Dutch capital of design knowledge. technique. I'm also heading the Brainport Eindhoven organization, an organization which has the approach of collaboration between, and on the one hand, the industry, the knowledge institutions, and on the other hand, the public partners. And talking about the fleet of zero emission buses, we have 43 buses at this very moment in service. 43 buses, completely electric. They drive 24/7 days a week. And it's enormous success. It was a procurement between the partners, industry, the bus company, and the city. But there is no involvement from the city in financial way. So the bus company and the industry did this, and with a great success. And there are no extra costs for the people who use the bus. The bus can drive 100 kilometers without charging, electric charging. So after 100 kilometers, it needs to be recharged, and it costs only 6 minutes. And what we face now is we want to be in the period of 2-3 years, in 2020, we want to replace all our fuel buses out of the city. There are hundreds of them, but the success from the 43 emission zero buses is so huge that we want to go further. And that is our goal for the next coming 2-3 years. And afterwards, we like to have also those buses in not only in the urban area, but also in the rural area. And that is a problem we have to face, because that needs more battery capacity. And battery capacity, to store more battery capacity, we need more research. And that's quite an issue. I told you we did it with the industry and the bus company, with no involvement in financial way from the city. But now the industry has a problem to finance the research. And in that respect, I ask also on the European Union for a funding from the research period for the next coming years, to become in 2025 also emission zero, not only in the urban area but also in the rural area.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to housing, which is something that Singapore is known for. And Koon, Hean, in your position, you oversee the development and management of, it's an astounding number. It's about 1 million public housing flats?
Yes.
It's unbelievable. And Singapore actually has one of the highest home ownership rates in the world. So tell us how Singapore did it.
I told Chris it's impossible to explain housing policy in 3 minutes. I will try. Thank you for allowing me to share. I think all cities face rapid urbanization, and affordable, or the lack of affordable housing, is a really major challenge. So in Singapore, I come from the Public Housing Authority. We are very unusual. I house 82% of the population in public housing in 1 million flats in 26 towns. It's highly unusual. And the type of housing is not the type of social housing that in the West most would be familiar with. Ours is really housing that is owned. I only have 6% of housing for rental. The rest is owned. So people own their own flats. So the question is, how do you do it? Well, there is a system of grants and subsidies that we give, and then everybody here will say, yeah, but okay, you're rich, you can pay for it. Actually, that's not true. We were full of slums and squatters about 40, 50 years ago. The amount of money that the government actually spends on public housing per year to house almost the whole nation is only 3% of the budget. So the question is, how do you do it 3% of the budget? Well, I think the answer really is how do you get people to pay their mortgage? I think that's the secret. And what we do is we have a mechanism where we use a pension fund, which is a compulsory savings rate, to help people to use that to pay for the housing. So very quickly, if you're a Singaporean like me, I work and I will put in 20% of my pay into the Central Provident Fund called the CPF every month. My employer pays 17%. So every Singaporean has a savings rate of 37%. And with this money, part of it goes into medical insurance. So everybody is covered by medical insurance. One part of it goes into retirement, and 23% can be used for housing, private housing or public housing. Now, if I price my flats such that it is no more than 25% of your income used for paying the mortgage, you can actually pay for your mortgage every month with no cash outlay because it all comes from the pension fund. So that's the short of it. But the housing is used also to take care of you as a social safety net when you retire. We find ways to help you to monetize the housing. I don't have the time to go into that, but broadly, that's the way we try to introduce home ownership. So just a very quick explanation, because we are talking about sustainability. The way that we plan our towns, I don't just build housing, I plan entire townships. So all towns are fully fitted out with all sorts of facilities, hospitals, schools, recreation, and we have a sustainability framework in which guides us with clear sustainability initiatives and strategies to meet 10 sustainability goals for all the towns. And overlaid on this is a smart town framework where we're using technology to help us to plan better, to improve the environment, to bring technology into the home, to provide services for people. So it's a whole slew of applications that we're looking at. All housing in Singapore has broadband and fiber, including all public housing. So it is easier for us to now introduce smart applications into the home. So a very quick example, we have an aging population, so elderly monitoring systems and telehealth become very important. But if we have Wi-Fi in a home, then people can actually subscribe to some of these services. So I'll just end there.
Okay, thank you. And we can circle back to some of that soon.
Thank you.
Try to boil 50 years of housing policy into 4 minutes. Denis, in addition to serving on the council in Dijon, you also have a role with the Dijon Metropolitan Authority. And that's a new body that represents, I guess, 24 municipalities and 250,000 people. So, with the authority, you are in charge of a smart city project that is getting a lot of notoriety. It's very innovative in France and perhaps around the world. So, could you just tell us about that and what's it about?
Well, first, I think when we think of smart cities, we have to have a vision and a strategy. I think it's the first. Because if you have no vision and no strategy, you can use all the equipment, but you don't know where you want to go. It's the first. And in Dijon, we have with the public authority, we have a new approach to the management of the public amenities. Because we think that we have a lot of infrastructures, we have a lot of urban services, a lot of urban functions that are not connected. And we want, with our project, to connect in a center all the functions in the city. For example, the security, municipal police, CCTV, traffic, municipal inquiries on snow, because we have snow in Dijon. And we have to connect all the functions to create in one center something to use digitally technology to remotely control, to coordinate with more efficient results all the functions. And we want also to centralize all the data of the functions. And with the data, we can create new services for citizens, because we think that citizens are part of our policy. And we can also have a lever for our territory to be more structured and to boost the economic and all the startup in this way.
And so it's bringing all those services together in one control center across all 24 cities, that's right?
Yes.
It's quite a large task.
Yes. And to do this task, we think that we can associate the best of private innovation with a consortium of 4 largest French enterprises. Bouygues Services, Citilum by EDF, Capgemini, and Suez. And with this private innovation, we think that public authority have to get the leadership because we have this vision.
And the you created through this, the decision was made, the data will be open, right? So
yes.
Why was that decision made, and what does that mean?
Yes, because we think the data is something public. We think that we cannot do these data to the private economy alone. We think that we have to create for citizens a lot of services, and we have to manage those data for the common.
Okay, great, thank you. Looking forward to hearing more about this. Ulrich, more than 100 cities are using FIWARE for their smart city applications. So just tell us about this. How does that help cities to deliver services more affordably? If we're looking at this question of services costing cities more over time, it sounds like you've working with solutions with cities to deliver services more affordably. How does that work?
Yeah, Chris, thank you for inviting me here to the panel. Happy to be here. Digital will change our world. That is not only true for industry companies, for example, when talking about Industry 4.0, but also true for cities. And digital will be cheaper, faster, and stronger. I'm more than believing in that. And when you walk around here, when you hear the different presentations, and not only theories and use cases, but in the meantime also really practical use of digital solutions in cities, I think it's a proof that digital and smart solutions can support to make cities more affordable and more sustainable. And today there are a lot of data existing in the city environment, coming from different sources, from sensors around the city, from IT systems in the city, from social media with relation to the cities. But very often this data are organized in silos, and it is very difficult to bring them together onto one platform, together into one environment. But this is important because very often the data generate their real value when they are brought together, coming from different histories, from different context environments. And we are talking then about the so-called multi-sided markets or two-sided markets, where information or data are creating their real value when they are used in a complete different environment as where they have been generated. And that's where FIWARE comes into the place. FIWARE is an open source platform for our smart digital future. It has been created over the last 5 years with funding from the European Commission. So it started originally as the Future Internet Private-Public Partnership. And the European Union invested some 400 million euro into the development of this technology. And as you said, in the meantime, more than 100 cities from 23 different countries have started to create their smart city solution, their digital urban platform based on FIWARE. And there are, as I mentioned, these silos, as there are a lot of hurdles, be it technical hurdles, be it organizational hurdles to bring this data together. FIWARE is a way to overcome these hurdles. It is not only a platform for open solutions or for smart solutions, it also comes with a data standard to standardize the access of data from IoT systems, from social media and so on. And on top of the platform, there are a lot of software building blocks, which are also open source, so royalty-free, available for everyone forever. These software building blocks can be used to create new smart solutions. And to bring this complete ecosystem into a sustainable future, end of last year, the FIWARE Foundation has been created by 4 leading European companies, which are Atos, that's the company where I'm originally coming from, engineering from Italy, Orange from France, and Telefonica here from Spain. The foundation is helping users to adapt this technology, but also companies to provide solutions based on it. And just to give one example, I just today visited the booth of the city of Montevideo, capital from Uruguay. They learned to know FIWARE mid of last year in a conference entitled 1 or 2 companies in Uruguay to build up FIWARE know-how, created their smart city platform, the first version of it, based on FIWARE, and have actually an RFP going on to replace 70,000 of their street lights in Montevideo by LED lights, and preparing to have smart lighting in the future, and requesting in this RFP that these lights are compatible to the platform, to be easily integrated into the platform by plug and play. And some of you might know smart lighting solutions pay for themselves. Yeah, because the energy consumption is much less, and within 8 to 10 years it's paid off. But they are going a step further, preparing for smart lighting, so that when during night, that the light can even be dimmed down, and when someone's walking there, it's increased again, and when nobody's there, when nobody needs it, it's closed down again. Saving energy, making a city more sustainable and affordable.
Very cool, great. Thank you for the example too, that helps. Francisco, you work on smart cities, but from the national level in Spain. So could you tell us how the Spanish government is working with cities, and in particular a lot of smaller cities?
Okay, thank you very much, Chris, and good afternoon, everyone. Yes, it's true. From a national perspective, smart cities are a big deal too. And that is so for a number of reasons. First, because all we know that smart cities have a strong potential for the improvement of living standards, providing better and more efficient public services. They create better climate for economic development, and they can be more sustainable and affordable, as we say. But that has to be at reach of every kind of city, not only big capital cities. So smaller cities need some guidance, some assistance, and some support. And there is a role there to be played by national governments. In second place, smart cities are a huge opportunity for industrial development as well. So there is an industrial policy here, because there is a demand for new products and services, high technology products, innovation. So there is an opportunity here that must be grabbed in terms of national perspective to foster a powerful ICT industry that produces the goods and services that smart cities need. And in the third place, we in our organization are quite familiar with both municipalities and regional governments who have been around for 15 years now, working hand by hand with administration at all levels, national, regional, and local, in different areas such as healthcare, education, culture, and now smart cities are an area of special interest for us. And for these reasons, more than 2 years ago, the National Plan for Smart Cities came into force. And this is a plan that has 3 main pillars. Okay? In the first place, funds are allocated so that cities can be assisted and supported in the digital transformation. And for now, more than 40 Spanish cities are benefiting from this with a budget of around 100 million euros. Secondly, the plan supports standardization. That is very important and key issue because standards create economies of scale and reduce risk. So, because first movers always take technology risk. And in order for your investments in technology in smart cities to be future-proof, it's very important that they are related to standards and they are not proprietary solutions so that you can grow on top of that in the future. And thirdly and last, the plan takes into account all the stakeholders, industry, academia, municipalities, of course, and a very important actor that are the networks of cities, cities that share their experiences, their views, and put in common all what they're doing in terms of digital transformation, and they can provide a lot of advice and guidance, and they can help to shape these plans that are presented by at the national level to help cities all over the country. So that's more or less what we're doing now and why that is being done.
Okay, great. Thank you, Francisco. I want to remind you all to ask questions through this right here, through the smartphone app on your phone, and I'll be coming to those soon. But I wanted to circle back with everybody to ask a question that often comes up at a conference like this, which is scaling solutions. So very often, good ideas within a city don't get past the pilot stage, or when they do, they make a difference in the city. But the question is, how can other cities get that technology, get the learning from the city? How can we grow good ideas? So I'd like to talk with you all about this a little bit. And Mayor, you mentioned some of the limitations of the electric buses, but you still like to grow that program out quite a bit. And so there's room for growth within Eindhoven, and there's also room for growth for cities across Europe and indeed around the world to adopt electric bus technology. So what's the next step?
Next step is growing, what you said. 43 buses have to, that's the beginning. We want 150, 200, and I think we are front runner in not only in the south of the Netherlands, but we are front runner in Europe. There is no city in Europe who has 43 zero emission buses. And it would be my suggestion that we have more and more cooperate with the cities. We, for instance, we work together in the Lighthouse project with cities as Manchester and Stavanger, and we face with each other solutions but also problems. We learn from each other, try and error. And this project from 43 zero emission buses was not from the beginning easy, because we had to face several problems with the batteries, the recharging, and that's one. But we did it. We did it, try and error, and now it's a success. So I would like to ask all of you to involve in such projects. Do it, because innovation is not easy. That's because it's innovation. And I think that if we go together, what we do in our approach with collaboration with not only the industry, but also the academia and also the government, then we make the difference. And what I said before, I think that we are now in a phase that we attract more specific the citizens, the inhabitants, because it's not industry driven, it's not academia driven, it's driven by the need of you and me, the public. What do we need in a world who is more and more a digital world, a world wherein we combine data, in a world wherein we speak about citizen engagement, and that's the way we have to deal the future with each other. So it's my ask to the big cities, also the small cities, but in Europe, in the world, we have to collaborate, we have to share knowledge, we have to share experience, we have to speak about the do's and the don'ts, try and error.
Thank you. And Koon, of course, in Singapore, it's not really a question of scale. You said you've got 1 million flats, so quite a large scale. But you did reference the sustainable aspect, how you're trying to make the new towns more sustainable. You referenced the sustainability plan. Could you speak a little bit more to how sustainability is permeating the mindset of an agency with 1 million flats?
Well, I think because Singapore is a city-state and we're so small, sustainability is almost a critical survival issue for us. Making sure that you don't use so much energy, because we import everything, right? Making sure we have sufficient water. So we have a national sustainable blueprint. So for me, because I built so much of the housing for Singapore, it's important for our towns to be sustainable so that we feed into the national goals. So we have very clear objectives. There are thousands of cities in the world that say they're sustainable. But the key really is to be very clear exactly what we mean when we define sustainability. So for ourselves, we have found what we wanted to do for sustainability. So we've set up very clear goals, and we have very detailed strategies and initiatives which we were built into the way in which we designed the town and built the town. And we do a lot of research. Sustainability is not just a word, it is the science behind it. So you need the science. So we do a lot of research on energy, water, greenery, management of waste. And the idea of SMART, since this whole Congress is about SMART, is to help us to actually stretch the sustainability goals. How do we make sure we can actually reach those goals? And I think if we apply ICT technology, it can really help us. So for example, very quick one, planning. I'm an architect planner, so I love to talk about planning. We use a lot of computer models to actually model the thermal comfort of the environment. So we can model an entire town on computer models, which ensure that the wind flows through. We are tropical. I know you may not like the wind. We love the wind and we love the shade. Because when the wind flows through, it cools the town, and we discourage people from using air conditioning so that there's natural ventilation. So these are the things that we can do using technology to help us.
Thank you. And Denis, in Dijon, I think the scale, I mean, just thinking regionally, as the Dijon Metropolitan area is doing 24 cities, there's scale inherent in that. I imagine there's a lot of challenges in doing that, but also some opportunities. So could you speak to the challenges and opportunities of doing a project like this one across an entire metropolitan area?
First, I think on all of the policy we made, we have the environment on the background. Because we think that when we want to integrate all the urban functions, we can have some savings, and also we can have a sustainable system. The both. In our project, we try to work in a contract. We'll generate some savings because we work on 65% savings on lighting. And it's when we work on 65% savings on lighting, we work also for the climate. And it's really a new way to think the policy. I think it's really very important if we want to have some sustainable action, because it's the same if you think of waste, if you think of water, if you think of all the urban functions, if you think of housing, it's the same. And in Dijon, we have this background. when we think our vision and our strategy. And it's with this background that we build a contract with the 4 largest enterprises with this project.
Great, great, thank you. And Ulrich, what does scaling up mean for FIWARE? I mean, you're working with, as you said, more than 100 cities in 20+ countries, so must be doing something right.
Yeah, definitely scaling up means intensifying the usage of these digital technologies and to make cities more sustainable and affordable. Maybe two examples, and again, walking around here, you see a lot of smart parking solutions, for example. I'm coming from Germany. The worst city in Germany is Stuttgart, where at least 30% of the traffic within the city is traffic searching for a free parking lot. And as long as we still use our own cars to get around in a city or to get into a city, we need spaces where to put our cars. And there, smart parking solutions come into the place. Based on FIWARE, there are different technology available with sensors or with cameras, for example, identifying via picture recognition whether a parking lot under a street light, for example, where the camera is installed, is occupied or not. And this information brought onto the platform, via the platform into the navigation system. And I can advise my navigation system not to bring me to my target address, but to the closest free parking lot to my target address, avoiding this 30% of traffic searching or parking searching, park searching traffic, and reducing the pollution which is created by it, saving time for the people, saving money, saving energy. And so that's one example, or having the mayor of Eindhoven here on the stage, maybe an example from Eindhoven. You have the street stratum, how do you pronounce it right? Stratum sign?
Stratum sign, yeah.
Stratum sign. Correct. So it's a kind of party street.
Yes.
Yeah, I think 55 bars in this street. And
20,000 people every week.
Yeah,
every weekend.
Every weekend. And in the past, quite a high crime rate there. And you installed a solution also based on FIWARE, using cameras, not doing picture recognition, so not identifying people, but identifying the movement patterns of the people. Second, installing microphones, not doing speech recognition, but identifying the kind of noise, the level and the kind of noise. And as a third source of information, social media analytics. So listening what's written in Facebook, in Twitter about the street, and by combining this information coming from different sources, maybe in the past in different silos, now brought together, the system is able to predict critical situations, bringing the right pictures in front of the officer in the police station, and this officer is now able to have a look at it and to either proactively send police people there or to increase the light in this part of the street. And very often, this simply is sufficient to de-escalate such a situation. And by doing so, the crime rate in the street has dramatically been reduced.
Absolutely.
The damages which were caused in bars and so on have been, the cost for repair and so on have been reduced. And finally, also the image of the street and of the city has been increased, simply by using such a smart solution, bringing information, bringing data from different sources together. And this is an example of this multi-sided market where information from different sources brought together, and by this creating new information to realize smart solutions for the benefit of the citizens of the city and the visitors in the city. No?
That's why I prefer to speak not about a smart city, but about the smart society. It's about the people who live there. On this example on the Stratum sign, it's an enormous success. A lot of cities all over Europe come to face it. And it was not easy also, this project, but do it, try and error. And we made a lot of failures, but now it's existing, and now we can explore this.
Yeah, yeah. And you ask about scaling. You can only scale if you do it. So I think it's important to have a strategy, to have an overall vision that the different building blocks you are creating, that they fit into this picture. Yeah. But you simply have to start it, to get experience. Also you gained experience in that. But to create solutions which are for the benefit of the people, which are used by the people, and that creates a momentum and a desire to do more and more. And I think that's one of the ways how to implement smart cities.
It's a good example for us because when we think about the project in Dijon, we have a use case, and the use case is an accident. And in an accident, for example, you have to maintain the situation, and you have also to have the policeman to act, and it's really a good use case to do some solutions and some services for people, and in this case, for example.
Yeah. It's the interaction, well-being of the people, and also for safety reasons. So it's from both sides you can experience with this.
Great. Yep. I want to go back to the Spain experience. So again, the national government working with cities, the scale must be part of that model too, so that cities aren't always reinventing the wheel. They can learn from each other. And so how does that happen within the Spanish model?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, I think that this is already scaling up, okay? Because you have only to have a walk in this expo and see how different it is from 3 years ago. So there are important number of cases of use, successful cases of use. I think the smart city concept has evolved from a name, an idea, to a reality in many cases. But it's true, it has to scale up even more. You need funding for that, of course. And only yesterday, our minister here said that additional funding worth 150 million euros will be committed for this purpose. But that's one part of the solution. You need more things. You need good cases of use, successful cases of use, so that by example you can promote the smart city concept between all your cities, and those front runners act as a good example for others that lag behind. You need security, and standards I mentioned before are important for that, because they provide security in terms of investment and guidance, and people can make well-informed decisions in order to transform their city. And that's especially important if there are smaller cities, medium-sized cities that don't have the skills, the personnel, the capacities that really big capital cities do have. Okay? And there is one more important thing in order to scale the model up. Ulrich mentioned silos. Silos in terms of data that cannot be shared between different areas or services. By sharing that and putting all that together into a platform, you can transform that into knowledge, information, and act after that. But those silos do exist not only in terms of data, but also in terms of organization. Yeah. So in a recent report that I read only yesterday, cities acknowledge that even though they're well aware that they can obtain savings between 20 up to 60% in terms of cost through efficiency, introducing ICT in the services, there are a number of hurdles. They always mention funding, of course, you need to assist them in that, but there are others, and the organization of the local administration is an important one. Local administration is organized into silos. People who are in charge of waste management have little to do with those who take care of gardens or transport or lighting and so on. And the model of smart city is a horizontal model. So not only the platform, the technology platform that implements that has to change and to break those silos, but the very organization of that public administration and those services have has to change, and that's another requirement for a scaling up. So there are a number of things, but as I said in the beginning, it's already scaling up, and the interest is huge. Our last call for cities, with a budget of around 65 million euro, we granted projects for 14 cities, but we had more than 100 applications. So cities in Spain are extremely interested in this, and they're committed to this, and they're working hard at, and that's something we can be really proud of.
Maybe, Chris, maybe I can just, because I'm still impressed. I've been 3 weeks ago in Estonia. Estonia, which is, I think, with no doubt, the #1 country in Europe when it comes to e-government. Not talking about smart city, but e-government. Yeah. And they really had a vision. 17, 18 years ago, they started. Since 2002, every Estonian city has a digital ID card for identification and authentication. And there are only 3 remaining processes in the country which cannot be done completely digital from wherever you are in the world. And these 3 are getting married, getting divorced, and buying a house. Everything else, everything else can be done completely digital. Yep. And for example, registering a new company takes on average 2 hours. You can do it completely digital, and the record is 17 minutes. You don't have to go to the city hall to do that. And they are really digital when it comes to e-government. And how they did it, they had a vision, they had a strategy, and they started with creating this infrastructure. All is running on one platform. In their case, it's called X-Road. And they have as you were talking about silos and also organizational silos, they have the so-called one-time principle that a citizen has only to give an information to the state or to the city one time. So for example, if I give my salary to the tax authorities, my salary is known to the state, and if they need my salary to calculate the fee for the kindergarten, for example, the kindergarten has to get it from the tax authority. Yeah. Yeah. And they have set up this infrastructure to do so. And by this really intense digitization of the public processes, they at least said that they have improved the country GDP by 2%, yep. Which is quite a lot amount, although it's a very small country, 1.3 million inhabitants, so it might be easy to do it for a small country, but still it is a major achievement, and I'm still impressed about what I saw there.
Thank you, it's a great example. I just want to remind everybody to ask your questions through the app. Unfortunately, my tablet's not working, so when I whip out my phone, I'm not texting anybody. I'm going to be looking at the questions on my phone, just full disclosure on that. And also, we do have a microphone over here and on that side as well, if you want to ask a question the old-fashioned way. But I wanted to, we won't be able to get this answered by everybody, but I did want to raise a question of the public sector and the private sector. Sort of many of these ideas we're talking about here are collaborations, but certainly when we talk about social outcomes like trying to make cities more affordable or equitable, that implies a strong role for the public sector. Yet we also have so many solutions that the private sector is bringing forward where the efficiencies can come into play and delivering services more affordably come into play. So just, Mayor, could you provide some thoughts on sort of where does the public sector's role begin and end, and where does the private sector's role begin and end? And perhaps in the Netherlands, I know research is a big part of it too. So just talk a little bit about where the lines are and kind of who's responsible for what.
Yeah. It's an easy question, a difficult answer. Because public and private sector, as I mentioned before, they have to cooperate. As a public discipline, we can't without the academia, and we can't work without the industry. We have to look at a new system to collaborate. If I mention you in the middle 90s, in my city, there were 50,000 jobs lost because of the change from Philips, the bankrupt, from DAF, the truck company. And at that time, we faced a huge problem. 50,000 people lost their jobs. So what to do? So we had made a collaboration with the partners, and we faced the problem. And if you now see, it's 20 years later, we are writing Chinese figures in our region. Chinese figures. Our GDP is 0.5% more than, for instance, the Amsterdam of Rotterdam region. And it's no competition, but we face that by strongly cooperating, you are able to make huge steps. So the government is a facilitator. The initiatives come from the industry, from the citizens, from the inhabitants, and from the academia, but you can't see them lose from each other. We have to cooperate, and that is the success of our region. And I think every week there come delegations from all over the world to my region, to my city, to ask for what's the hidden secret from your region. Why did you in the year 90s were completely bankrupt, and now you are front runner in Europe on the high-tech scale, and that is why the solution. I can't give you the answer on the secret, because we faced a problem and we came together and we faced the problem, and now with strongly cooperation, the approach of collaboration, we made this to a huge success.
Great, thank you. And Koon, I think that the scale of what Singapore has done just almost seems mind-boggling to many countries where maybe the public sector isn't quite as involved as heavily. So could you speak to, is this a model that can transfer, or maybe parts of it can transfer? Just how applicable is this in other contexts?
That's a very common question I'm asked. Mm-hmm. I think you cannot replicate it exactly, but there are principles that you might want to think about. Because providing affordable housing requires commitment from the government. Now that is replicable, whether the government has commitment to find a solution. And it's also about finding a way to make it, the framework to be fiscally sustainable. So in Singapore, when you look at housing, it's really not just about housing, it's how the government is run. How do you get money to subsidize housing? And this is about fiscal policy. And in our case, it's about land value capture. So you sell land and you get money, and then that's how you put in infrastructure, or you can help to fund housing. So it's about fiscal sustainability. The other side of it, that's all on policy and governance. The other side of it is really the technical part. How do you design towns that are highly livable? How do you design towns that are sustainable, that make the quality of the environment very good? I don't know how many people have actually visited Singapore. I almost wanted to ask a show of hands. Thank you for visiting us. We are a very small place and probably one of the most dense cities in the world, but I hope that when you come to Singapore, you don't feel the denseness, because there's a certain way in which you can design to deal with livable density. So I think some of these things are actually replicable. The technical part of it is particularly, and the governance. But can I just address the question about public-private partnership? Lest you think that in Singapore it's a lot of top-down, it actually isn't, because the government sees itself as a facilitator. So governments are there to make it easy for businesses to do their business and to harness the enterprise and the energy and the resource of the companies. So the government really enables the private sector and the companies to do what they do best. And so it's about having the right legislation, the rule of law, and putting in enablers. For smart cities, it's about giving them digital platforms, supporting R&D, supporting startups, giving money for a lot of research. So it's a really facilitative environment and putting out open data. But it is for the companies then to come up with the solutions. And the government is open to giving test bits. And it's about taking risks. I think a lot of us here are talking about just try it. Trying means you take the risk. It may work, it may not work, doesn't really matter. But you allow the private sector to have those opportunities to do test bits and living laboratories. And then from there, you can scale up. Great,
thank you. And Denis, I wanted to ask you this too, because one of the innovative features of what you're doing in the Dijon Metropolitan area is the contract itself. It's a 12-year performance-based contract that guarantees a certain amount of savings. So could you just speak to that a little bit and what's innovative about that?
I think all the territories are specific. And you have to think about strengths and weakness of your territory if you want to have a vision and if you want to have a strategy. And for us, tourism is something important. For us, gastronomy is something important. For us, a new management of public services is something important to have a way to boost all the strength we have in our territory. And in this way, the way that we think the contract is a way to have savings, but it's a way to have savings to invest. You know, and I think that some principle can be reproduced. If you have this way of thinking, if you have this way to define your need, your specific need in your territory. I think it's very, very important if you want to success in this way of integrating all the function, all the urban function, because Eindhoven, Singapore, Dijon are very different. And we cannot say that you have to copy. It's not possible, I think.
And we actually have a question for you through the app that wants well, the question is, how did Dijon Métropole have to reorganize to take full advantage of the data collected? So was there any reorganization required to do this, to think across the 24 municipalities?
We have to realize this.
Yeah.
It's a project. I cannot say to you now we have really to realize it next year.
Yeah, okay. Another question for Ulrich. How does FIWARE manage to get all those cities? I know there's a community. What is the importance of that? Maybe you can talk about what the community is.
Yeah, so there is an initiative, in this case called the Open and Agile Smart City Initiative. And they simply signed, in a first step, a letter of intent to commit to use this technology. And then we are helping this community of cities to learn from each other. And as all the solutions are based on the same data model or on the same interfaces, it is very easy to replicate and to reuse successful implementations in one city in another city. So, and this approach is helping the cities to learn from each other, to reuse solutions that prove to be to create value in other cities and implement it in their own city. But again, it is important, and that's true for most of these cities, that they have a digital strategy, that they know where they want to go to, and simply then have to look where are existing building blocks in this community which fit into my picture, and then being able to implement it into the overall solution in the city. And maybe coming back to an earlier question, how to scale up and how really to implement a digital city. For me, it's very important, as I mentioned 2 or 3 times to have a digital strategy. It is not sufficient to simply assign a chief digital officer or how you ever call this person. It is important that it starts with the very top of the city, that there are mayors able to sit here on the stage and to talk about their digital strategy. And we had, I'm coming from Germany, there was a competition in Germany called the Digitale Stadt, the digital city. And there it was for the finalists also required that just the mayor presented his digital strategy in front of the jury. And I think that's important that it starts. But then there has to be a team working on it and building up know-how, looking around what are existing solutions that can be replicated. So there are several building blocks, but again, it starts with the top.
Thanks. And last question through the app that I'll direct to Francisco. It's about tourism. Barcelona being a city with much tourism, many of us right now technically are tourists in a certain sense, and so obviously many cities in Spain, I'm sure many of the smart cities are big tourist towns. How do smart cities contribute to sustainability, especially in the tourism sector? Any examples coming from some of the Spanish cities you're working with that deal specifically with tourism?
Well, I think that's a very appropriate question here. We have more than around 70 million tourists per year in Spain now. And that's a big, massive industry, a very important part of our GDP. But it's true that strain can be put on the infrastructures of cities because they are designed and dimensioned for a certain number of people and activity. So that smart cities and technology can be a great assistance to improve and maintain the quality of services both for inhabitants and for visitors. So that's why we have paid special attention to tourism and tourism applications of the smart city concept in our plan for smart cities. And there is actually a new call was announced only a few days ago, specifically for projects directed to touristic cities. And you can have an impact on transport, flows of people, safety, events, control. You can, as we mentioned before, use the systems to detect if the flow of people and arrange the traffic flows depending on the situation, the time of the day. You celebrate special events or whatever that change the conditions of cities. You can do all that. You can provide information to people that are visiting you. You can open channels so that they have access to all the information they may need in case of an emergency, for instance. People who don't live in that city, in case of an emergency, they probably are not aware where to go, what to do, who to call. So you can open channels to help and assist them very rapidly and in an efficient way. So tourism is a very important issue, and we are trying to develop a model here, and a model of tourist smart destinations to be promoted elsewhere as well, but to be applied in our cities in the very first place. It's a big deal here.
Great, great. Well, I'm afraid we're out of time. Thank you very much. I think many different ideas from this panel, but I'd say one of my takeaways is technology is often part of the solution, but it's not the only solution. And really, you need to have the vision. If we're talking about trying to create cities that are more affordable and sustainable, it starts with the vision. And I love the line that you can't scale until you just start something. So maybe can get to the scale of, say, 1 million flats someday, but you can't get there without just starting and seeing if it works. So big round of applause to our panelists. Thank you very much.